where I see herbs is they're just fantastic cell protectants to protect us from all the things that are threatening our cells and causing stress. So taking herbs gives you an edge that you really can't get otherwise.
You're listening to Be Well by Kelly LeVeque. With over 30 years' experience, Dr. Bill Rawls has dedicated his life to medicine. When a health crisis with chronic Lyme disease abruptly changed his quality of life, he came face to face with the limitations of modern medicine and began to explore the vast possibilities of alternative treatments. Restoring his health through holistic and herbal remedies inspired him to share his revelations on the importance of cellular wellness for defending against microbes and other root causes of illness. Through his best-selling books, Unlocking Lyme and The Cellular Wellness Solution, Dr. Rawls demonstrates why crucial herbal phytochemicals are key to protecting cellular health and strengthening the body's defense against illness. Let's jump in with Dr. Rawls and learn how to use herbs and protect ourselves at a cellular level. Dr. Bill Rawls, it is such a pleasure to be sitting across from you. I've been looking forward to this conversation since one of my followers sent me your book 2 years ago.
Really?
So
wow.
Thank you so much for being here.
Pleasure. Absolutely.
I think that your take on wellness and sort of your meandering path to get there is really like eye-opening and profound, that our body is this collection of cells, and that if we understand ourselves as really an ecosystem of cells and we understand the threats, that we can understand chronic illness. And so we're going to unpack that today, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, that's awesome. But my favorite topic.
Your favorite. But before we get there, I would just love to learn about your journey, because you spent 20 years as an OBGYN delivering babies and working with patients with acute issues and supporting, bringing babies into this world, but then made this massive transformation personally because of your own health issues. So can we talk about how you got here?
Yeah. It was all by accident. It wasn't planned.
Yeah.
But it's been an interesting journey nonetheless. So I went to medical school, actually fourth generation doing this, and with this idea of wanting people to be well and have a better life, and got to medical school and found it wasn't always like that. On the medical floors, it was a lot just keeping people alive. So I gravitated toward the one thing that was about wellness, and that was OBGYN, bringing life into the world. It was working with mainly well patients who wanted to stay well. So it was a nice group of people to work with. And I did that. But 40 years ago, it's hard to believe, I graduated from medical school 40 years ago this year. But 40 years ago, practicing OBGYN, especially in a small town, meant taking call every second to third night. And when I was on call, I might get 3 or 4 hours of sleep a night. But even when I wasn't on call, I wasn't sleeping as much as I should, because that wasn't kind of my time to do what I wanted to do. And every other night, every third weekend, it seemed like I was always working. And plus, busy office practice too. So in my 30s, I could do it and just push through. But as I got into my 40s, I just started losing the ability to sleep, and my body started breaking down. So by my late 40s, I was really falling apart. And I didn't completely understand why, because it wasn't just being tired. I think people think, well, you don't sleep, you just get tired. You just feel like you're sleepy. I was starting to have heart issues and brain issues, and my joints were falling apart, and my whole body was completely breaking down. I didn't understand what was going on. I went to internists and other physicians in the community, all the lab testing and everything else, and it was all kind of equivocal. And finally settled on a diagnosis of fibromyalgia. Mm-hmm. But like so many people with fibromyalgia, it was like, there has to be something there. There has to be something that was driving this. And eventually I had to give up practicing OBGYN Because I couldn't really declare a disability, I didn't have a diagnosis.
Mm-hmm.
I opened a primary care practice that I didn't have to do call,
Mm-hmm.
but it was still pretty demanding. And I kept working with, I'm going to figure this out. I became certified in holistic medicine. I mean, I really became very aggressive about, I'm going to find the answers to this problem. And I wasn't satisfied that, my life was going to end or be compromised starting at age 47.
Yeah.
So I kept working at it. I kept looking for answers. I finally thought about Lyme disease, did a Lyme test. It was negative. Later found out the testing wasn't that good. And I found enough of a positive test to say that has to be what it is. And other things in my life, another tick bite clued me in to, this is probably this thing called Lyme disease. So I took antibiotics. I did several rounds of antibiotics. And every time, within 2 or 3 weeks, my gut was wrecked and I was sicker than when I started. And I just didn't have the resource to go see Lyme doctors and go out of town for care. So I was pretty much stuck trying to figure it out. About that same time period, around 2005, a book came out offering an herbal protocol for Lyme disease. I read the book. It had some credible science. And I was desperate. I mean, I was desperate.
Yeah.
And it was like, maybe, at least it's something I can try. I can bring it to me. And so I ordered all these different herbal extracts, things that you can't really find at a health food store, and started taking them with low expectations. It was like, if these things actually work, they're actually killing microbes. I actually have microbes in my body, because all of that was a bit of an unknown. Probably it's not going to work, but it did.
Wow.
And I started getting better. And long story short, it wasn't just like I suddenly got well. It was 5 years of really learning about herbs, learning how to work the herbs, learning how to change how I went about life, what I ate, and everything else, that I gradually got my health back. But over that 5 years, I learned more than all the time I was in medical school and all the time of practice before that about how the human body works and what's going on inside. And everything that I learned, I applied to my practice and my patients. So I started developing a reputation of being able to help the unhelpable. So I'd have all these people coming in and I'd put them on these protocols with the herbs and things that mirrored what I did. And they had good responses too. And so I've spent the past 15 years of my life really trying to understand exactly what's going on. And it's caused me to question a lot of things about conventional medicine, many things about functional medicine, about how we're going about managing chronic illness that are just very, very different.
Wow. Well, it's fascinating to me that you feel like you've learned more in the last 15 years than you ever learned in medical school and in traditional practice. I'd love to understand what was kind of put on its head for you about chronic illness and how we should be looking at the body. Like, what would you want the listeners to understand about the human body and this ecosystem of cells that we live in?
Yeah. When you look at the healthcare system, I would say that most people would say we have some problems there. It's not working. It's not working for us. It's very expensive. And what I would say is, and what I learned early on and really learned well later, was that what we do really, really well in conventional medicine is acute intervention.
Mm-hmm.
And I ended up gravitating away from managing chronic illness toward OBGYN because it was acute intervention.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody breaks a leg. We need to know where it's broken, how it's broken, so we can go in and fix it, and we can do a great job with that. Somebody blocks an artery in their heart, or in my end, has a tubal pregnancy or an arrested labor. We can fix that. Single problem, direct intervention, we're good at it.
Yeah.
But when you look at chronic illness, it's not one thing, it's the entire body breaking down. And instead of addressing the causes, the broken leg, the blocked artery, we start addressing the manifestations of illness. We have drugs and medical therapies and technologies that block the processes of illness, but we don't get to the root causes of what the problem is, so people don't get well. There is not a drug made that gets to the root causes of chronic illness. They can only block the manifestations of illness. And that can reduce symptoms and it can stabilize the illness. But the patient is going to end up in a state of managed illness, not a state of wellness. And that's our problem. And I'd been quoting the statistic that 60% of the American population is chronically ill, and that comes from the CDC. Last week, WHO, World Health Organization, defined it as 70% of the world's population is struggling with a chronic illness. Whoa, that right there says what we're doing is not working. We're missing something.
My new amino acid supplements come in flavorless and lemon water, and they're flying off the shelves, and here's why. I have meticulously sourced these vegan fermented essential amino acids from Japan. I am so proud of this being made the Be Well way, with maximum quality and minimum ingredients. My flavorless is simply those vegan fermented essential amino acids from Japan. Our lemon water contains minimal ingredients of only organic lemon powder, organic citric acid, and organic monk fruit. No natural flavors, no artificial flavors, no artificial sweeteners, no emulsifiers, no additives. This is simply that nutrition targeted for your goals. If you want to give my Be Well protein or aminos a try, or restock it if you're already loving it, take advantage of my gift for podcast listeners. Code podcast10 is going to get you $10 off just for being a listener. Write it down and shop with me after you listen.
I have to tell you about something that's completely changed my daily routine. AG1. As a busy mom juggling school drop-offs, after-school activities, and sports practices, it's the one simple thing that helps me feel one scoop ahead of everything life throws me. Since starting AG1, I've noticed steady energy, better digestion, fewer supplements cluttering my counter. Its antioxidants, probiotics, and functional mushrooms help keep my immune system strong, while superfoods and B vitamins give me balanced energy all day. No crash, just focus. But winning my mornings really starts the night before. Sleep is everything. If I don't get it, my day feels off. That's why I'm so excited about AGZ. AG1's new nighttime drink. It's melatonin-free and formulated with adaptogens, herbs, and minerals to help you fall asleep, stay asleep, and wake up feeling refreshed. I drink it about 30 minutes before bed. Warm with water, and the chocolate flavor is my favorite. It's delicious, relaxing, and the perfect way to wind down after a full day. I use AG1 in the morning or midday and AGZ at night, and you should too. To simplify your wellness routine and feel your best all day, head to drinkag1.com/bewell for a free welcome kit with the AG flavor sampler and a bottle of vitamin D3 plus K2 when you first subscribe. That's drinkag1.com/bewell.
Right. Well, I mean, even just thinking about that example of managing symptoms, you can look at something like a metformin or, all of the new injectables like Trulicity or semaglutide or whatever you're using to manage like blood sugar symptoms, or now even peptides, BPC 157 for gut inflammation. But it's like, why the heck is that even happening? Like, what's happening in our body that's creating this cascade of elevated blood sugar, this cascade of elevated triglycerides, the issue with gut inflammation? Like, why can't we heal? Why can't we keep up? Like, you had to close your practice after 20 years. Like, you were not sleeping well. You had all the symptoms. You couldn't get them under control. So many clients that I see and so many community members that I have are up against that same issue. Like,
what are we missing?
We're missing the root causes.
So
We're
what are the
not
root causes?
getting to the root causes. It's let's take it down to the cellular level.
Let's do it.
Here's a good point.
This is your meat and potatoes.
I'm going to get you to think about your body differently, all right?
Okay.
And that's going to lead to the parameters of what wellness is, of what is required for wellness, all right? So we tend to think about the body as a whole. We tend to think about it as parts that make up the whole. We have a heart, we have a liver, we have kidneys, so we have organs, and we consider, well, those are the functional units of the body. But if you really want to understand something, take it down to its smallest functional unit, and that is a living cell.
Mm-hmm.
So everything, our heart is not a unit itself as much as it is a composite built of billions and billions of cells working in synchrony. So everything that happens in the body is due to the actions of cells. Absolutely everything. So every one of our cells came from one cell, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you had one cell starting out, and that cell inside your mother's womb divided up and diversified into all the cells in your body. And then you went through childhood where you were building out cells at an enormous rate. And that's why kids are so vulnerable, is because there's so much going on inside their body. So age 20, you reached a peak. And at that point, all your cells were brand new. And you had 5 to 10 times more cells than you actually needed to survive. So after that point, you start losing cells, and that's what aging is. But everything that happens, we depend on our cells for everything. So each one of our cells is an independently functioning unit. So you can think of them almost as little microscopic machines, and they're all independent. Now, they may all be working in synergy, and that's what hormones and nerves and signaling agents do, is they coordinate cellular functions. But all of our cells, every one of our cells is independent. And so when you start thinking about them as machines, they have operating requirements. Every machine has to, even a little biological machine has operating requirements. So when you get to the operating requirements, when they don't get these things, they become stressed and they can't do their job, and they start to become dysfunctional. So there are only 5 main categories of things, and you're going to recognize all this stuff, but 5 main categories of things that affect cellular functions. So all of your cells have to have the right nutrients. And all of what they need is defined by that genetic program. So what our cells need to function properly was defined by what our human ancestors have eaten through human history. So our cells need the right nutrients to function properly. Different cells may need different nutrients, like thyroid cells need iodine to produce thyroid hormone. Heart cells mainly burn fat for that slow, steady burn. But all of our cells need the right nutrients. If you're eating a diverse whole food diet that mimics what humans have always eaten, you're going to get all the nutrients that your cells need to function. The carbohydrates, fats, amino acids, vitamins, minerals, all of those things are needed for cells to produce energy, to do their jobs, to replace parts. So they have to have the right nutrients.
That's easy. You're preaching to the choir.
All right. Yep. I figured you would like that one. So
say it louder
2,
for those in the back.
Number 2, you know this one too. And I've seen what you do with water and how you go about life already. Cells need a clean operating environment.
Mm-hmm.
They have to have, so when they're exposed to toxic substances, they can't function properly.
Mm-hmm.
So we live in a world where we're surrounded by toxic, unnatural hydrocarbons, mainly from petroleum and coal.
Mm-hmm.
And our whole world is built that way. And so, like, if you went back and ate the plants that became coal, or ate the algae that became petroleum, it'd actually be good for you.
Mm-hmm.
But those organic chemicals have been compressed in the ground for so long that they become unnatural. They become twisted in such a way that they're not compatible with biological life.
Mm-hmm.
But they're organic compounds that we absorb very, very easily. So when we're exposed to these things in our food, in our water, in our air, they enter our body very easily. They enter our cells. Our cells try to use them, but they can't. And so it gums up cellular function, so our cells can't work as well.
Can I interrupt you for a second? Can you give me some regular everyday examples that people might be coming in contact with that are gumming up their cells?
Yeah, well, it's everywhere. Just walking out in the street and what's coming out of the pipe of the tailpipe of cars,
Right.
and plastics, and and all of our kids are playing on soccer fields that are regularly saturated with glyphosate and other kinds of chemicals, all petroleum derived.
Right.
Most people don't know this. 99% of our pharmaceuticals actually are made from petroleum chemicals. So we use it for everything. And these are very unnatural chemicals that that basically bog up our cells.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very insidious. But if you look at the science, there's more and more science that accumulates every day, that the air that we're breathing and what ends up in our food and what ends up in our water is affecting our ability to stay healthy and contributing to disease.
Right.
I mean, it's like, and we pick it up in odd ways, like heavy metals. Do you know where all the mercury comes from? You hear about mercury in swordfish, right?
Right.
So where does it come from?
Well, I know there are heavy metals in the soil, and I know there are heavy metals in like mercury amalgams, and I know that like the larger the fish gets, the more metal accumulation happens.
Right. So it builds up the food chain.
Yeah.
Little animals eat bigger animals. The concentrates up the food chain. So the biggest animals like tuna and swordfish and cows have a lot more toxins than small animals.
Mm-hmm.
But where do all those heavy metals come from?
Jeez, I don't know. The water supply? No.
Burning coal.
Burning coal.
Yep. That's where most of it comes from. So when all that plant matter that became coal was compressed in the ground, it also, all these heavy metals were compressed within it.
Mm.
And these aren't natural, except for volcanoes that were occasional, you just didn't have that kind of stuff coming to the surface.
Mm.
But now taking coal out and burning coal, it's getting into our atmosphere.
Wow.
And it precipitates out in the water, and it gets in the animals, and it gets concentrated up the food chain. So all this heavy metal exposure is actually coming from years and years of burning coal.
Wow.
Yep. Petroleum also has coal, but has heavy metals, but not to the degree that coal does.
Mm.
But we're still getting it there too.
Right.
Yeah.
The accumulation over time.
That's number 2. We got to move along, right?
Okay, right.
All right.
Nutrition, toxic environments.
Right.
Okay.
Number 3. This is the one that got me. Our cells need downtime to recover from working all day. So our cells, right now, our cells are humming along. It's daytime, we're active, and our cells are working hard. Well, that wears out parts that have to be replaced. They need downtime to replace that. And that occurs mostly in sleep.
Mm-hmm.
So that 8 hours of sleep, a lot is happening when you sleep, but a big part of it is cellular repair and recovery.
Mm-hmm.
So you need sleep to rebuild your cells. Average American sleeps 6.5 hours a night.
Mm-hmm.
So what's happening is they start their day with a deficit that their cells haven't recovered from the day before. And this affects all cells in the body, but some cells more than others. But it's like our heart cells have to rest in between beats, and therefore they have to rest and recover in that short space of time. So our heart, that's one of the reasons our heart cells are so vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
But our cells, we need that downtime. So our super activated fight or flight response, putting our body into alert, our cells don't have the time to recover. So we're always working at a deficit. So cellular recovery is really important, and time to do that is important. We're not getting that.
I am so excited to share with you guys an incredible scientific breakthrough to support our long-term health and wellness. Meet Fatty 15, powered by C15, the world's first essential fatty acid discovered in over 90 years. Scientists are calling it the longevity nutrient, and for good reason. Fatty 15 was founded by Dr. Stephanie Van Watson, who uncovered C15 while studying aging dolphins. Her research revealed something incredible. C15 works by strengthening our cells, improving our mitochondrial function, and protecting us against damaging free radicals. The result? Better long-term metabolic, liver, and heart health. Fatty 15 is powered by pure vegan-friendly form of C15 and an odd-chain saturated fatty acid that's more stable than most polyunsaturated fats. That means it resists oxidation, staying potent in the bottle and in your body. It turns out that many of us are deficient in C15, which results in weaker cells that make less energy and quit working earlier than they should. All of that makes us age faster, sleep poorly, and feel sluggish. But by replenishing our cells with that essential C15 nutrient, the only ingredient in Fatty 15 effectively repairs our cells and restores our long-term health. Plus, it comes with a gorgeous reusable glass jar and refill capsules shipped quarterly right to your door. Fatty 15 is on a mission to replenish your C15 levels and restore your long-term health. You can get an additional 15% off their 90-day subscription starter kit by going to fatty15.com/Kelly15 and using the code Kelly15 at checkout. If you're trying to stay hydrated this summer without the sugar, food dyes, or mystery ingredients found in typical sports drinks, let me introduce you to Element. It's a zero-sugar electrolyte drink mix made for people who want to feel their best. Whether you're chasing kids around the park, powering through a workout, or just trying to beat the mid-afternoon slump, electrolyte balance is key. Low levels can show up as headaches, fatigue, muscle cramps, and even brain fog. Element gives you the perfect balance of sodium, potassium, and magnesium without any of the junk. This summer, I've been hooked on their lemonade salt flavor. It's tart, salty, and truly tastes like summer in a glass. It reminds me of the lemonade stands I used to grow up with, and it's one I feel great sharing with my boys. The best part, lemonade salt is officially here to stay, starting September 2nd through October 31st. And here's the best part. You can try Element totally risk-free. If you don't love it, they'll refund you, no questions asked. Plus, when you order through my custom link, you'll get a free 8-count sample pack of Element's most popular flavors, including 2 sticks of citrus salt, raspberry salt, watermelon salt, and orange salt with any purchase. So just head to drinkelement.com/Kelly. That's drinklmnt.com/Kelly, spelled Kelly. It's the perfect way to find your favorite or share with a friend. So I'm going to ask a couple follow-up questions to that because I'm in that stage of life, right? I have the podcast, I have the supplement company, I have clients, I have the business, I have 3 little boys and a husband. We're in flag football, we're in soccer. It's like, we want to call it the rat race, and I'm in a constant, I'm constantly reviewing my calendar and reviewing the schedule and seeing where I can say no and trying to pull back. But if I were to, in this phase of life, look at cellular recovery and take it super seriously, is there specific times that are more beneficial to sleeping, like a bedtime to an awake time? Sleep hygiene's locked. Cold, dark room. Yeah. I don't eat a couple hours before I go to bed. I limit screen time. I have like my little red light over my paper books now. I feel like I've done the things, but the sleep can be truncated at this age with a 6, 4, and 2-year-old. Pee-pee wake ups, random crib wake ups.
Right.
I get called for multiple times a night. We'll just put it that way. So what do we really need for that repair to happen? And even take it a step further for autophagy to happen and right. True, taking out the trash, so to speak.
Yeah, that word autophagy, the ability of our cells to rebuild and recover, is really critical. Well, first of all, you're so far above what most people are doing, then I think you're in pretty good shape. And as I said in the beginning, you still have like 5 to 10 times more cells than you need to survive. So you're pretty good there.
Well, I'm not 20 anymore. I'm
Well,
42.
Okay, 42. Yeah. But I think, you're doing the things that you can do, and you have to go about life. There is not a perfect life. And quite frankly, I mean, I've thought about this plenty. I mean, if you went through a life that had zero stress, it'd probably be really boring,
Yeah.
So, it's finding that balance, right?
Right.
And my life was way out of balance.
Mhm.
And I think this happens with a lot of people. And the people that I see who become chronically ill, it's not, one thing typically. It's a lot of other factors adding up. So I had the sleep factor, and that just affected my diet. And, the only thing that I was doing right was trying to exercise regularly.
Mhm.
But it's finding balance. And, we'll get to kind of the last thing you can do to protect yourself too. That gives everybody an edge, and it's given me an edge too. But it's about finding balance. So let's go on to number 4, and that is blood flow. Blood flow is really important. So your cells are really compacted tight together. If you look under a microscope slide of cells, it's like they're all squeezed together. Well, they have to get all the nutrients and oxygen and everything they need through that little narrow space called the extracellular space.
Mhm.
And that space gets congested. When cells die, when microbes die, it creates debris and congestion in that space. So not only cells can't get the nutrients and oxygen they need, they can't purge toxic substances and metabolic waste. So you have to flush that space.
Mhm.
And the way to do it is to move. So when you move, you're moving blood, you're increasing your heart rate, you're increasing blood flow, and that flushes that extracellular space and flushes away the toxic waste and buildup. And that flushes it into the lymphatic system. So moving is such a critical part of our lives. So that's kind of the top of my list. Now, there are a lot of good things about movement, that from increasing endorphins to, there's a long list, but the top of my list is always increasing blood flow because it's so critical for cellular health. It basically allows your cells to breathe. And we live in a world that's very sedentary. People aren't moving.
Mhm.
We all get stuck behind a computer and just getting enough. And it doesn't necessarily mean going to the gym and working out intensely for an hour. It's just getting up and moving off and on throughout the day. That's what's normal for us, and that's what we're really adapted to. So that's important, number 4. And then the 5th thing that really, the big one that gets our cells is microbes. So that's our cell's greatest threat is microbes. And if our cells are vulnerable, as mine were, from not sleeping and not eating and all these stress factors, then you're more vulnerable.
Mhm.
So microbes, viruses, bacteria, protozoa, yeast, are always trying to get inside of our body. And we have things that are living inside of our body. And basically, you have to think about it this way. Everything has to eat, right?
Mhm.
Everything living is food for something else. We're basically food for bacteria and other microbes. They need our cells, our resources, our organic molecules to survive. And that's why things are trying to constantly get inside of our body. And they have really sophisticated ways of affecting us. And it's actually not as much the microbes that we notice that make us sick. It's the ones that we pick up all the time as we go through life that end up being a bigger factor, and in my opinion, a factor in every single chronic illness. And I think probably we'll find every cancer.
That's such a powerful statement. When you think about the most pathogenic, like, types of bacteria or viruses that
are sneaky and kind of break through into our body and can go dormant and really affect our immune system's ability to fight back. Like,
Yeah.
what are the biggest ones? Like, what are we looking for, and how come physicians are missing these?
Yeah. It's because we do great with acute intervention. Our infectious disease experts know more about Ebola virus than they do about the microbes that, like with chronic Lyme disease and things like that. And that was what my experience taught me, that I learned as I thought about it. I probably picked up the bacteria that were in my system that made me sick when I was as a child, but they didn't make me sick then.
Mm.
And that's what I've realized talking to people with chronic Lyme disease. 90% of the people that I've spoken with chronic Lyme disease don't remember a tick bite or becoming sick around the time of a tick bite. In other words, they didn't get sick then. But going through all of their histories, what I find is they all have a perfect storm. They have factors that came into their lives, kind of like mine, but it might have been, well, I was in an automobile accident and I was in the hospital for 3 months recovering and I just never got well. Or I had all this horrible stress, I got fired from my job and my house burned down and, just on and on. And they become chronically ill at that time. There are cases where people become chronically ill after a tick bite or at the time of a tick bite. I had a conversation with someone the other day that said, yeah, I got sick when that tick bit me and I never got better. But when I went further into questioning, it was like, okay, on a scale of 1 to 10, what was your stress level in your life like at that time? Oh, it was off the charts. It was beyond a 10. Or people that had many tick bites all at one time, so they got a big load of microbes. But most people don't get sick. And that tells you a lot about the nature of these bacteria, but it also the nature of a lot of other things that we're exposed to.
Wow. So what are some of the most common bacterial infections that are maybe Lyme related or co-infections for Lyme that people may start to see? I know you don't like diagnosis, so we'll unpack that next, but
Sure.
that someone might be initially diagnosed with from a blood draw or however they would the test for that.
Yeah. The testing isn't that good.
Yeah.
That's the thing that frustrates a lot of providers.
Okay.
So our testing is built for acute infection.
Right.
When you have an acute infection with something, you have the microbe is running through your system. You have an acute immune reaction. So the chances of a positive test are high.
Right.
When you have, I don't even like to use the word chronic infection anymore, because what an infection is when something enters your body. When you have a foreign microbe enter your body and you have a reaction to that. If you have any situation that's chronic, it says, well, those things have been there and your body isn't getting rid of them like it should. So we have some other things going on. And so whenever you enter that chronic state, it's never one microbe. At first, when we started hearing about Lyme disease, it was, this one bacteria called Borrelia that was found after people got sick in Lyme, Connecticut. But then they started testing more and more, and it was like, no, they're co-infections. There's Babesia and Bartonella and Anaplasma and Rickettsia. But these people are testing positive for chlamydia and mycoplasmas and Epstein-Barr. Well, you don't get those from ticks, right?
Right.
So it was a lot of things. And the list that I've been building out is well over 100 microbes big, and I think we're just scratching the surface. So what happens is, this is the nature of these things, the stealthy nature of it. So when we're bitten by a tick, it could be Borrelia, but there could be other things too. I mean, ticks carry hundreds of different bacteria, and we don't know what most of them do.
Mm-hmm.
But the nature of the bacteria is it's very stealthy. It's not wanting to make you sick.
Mm-hmm.
It's wanting to establish a presence in your body,
Mm-hmm.
right? So all it wants to do is get inside, have some resources, hang around, grow a little bit, and have an opportunity to spread to another tick or another host.
Mm.
So it's waiting for another tick bite. Well, that's true in an awful lot of things that we're exposed to. Epstein-Barr when we were kids, mycoplasmas. Everybody's got mycoplasmas of some kind, or chlamydia pneumoniae. Kids pick that up. Most kids are exposed to that.
Mm-hmm.
Bartonellas, that's a big one. There are dozens of Bartonellas, and we pick them up, I mean, bitten by cats or hamsters or things like that, you pick these things up. And they don't necessarily make you sick or noticeably sick at that time.
Mm-hmm.
So they're trying to get through your bloodstream and get beyond your immune system as fast as they can.
Mm-hmm.
And they have two main survival mechanisms that I think are really important for understanding these things. So one, they grow really slowly.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really important in treatment. Different bacteria have different strategies, right? So you get a virus, you pick up a pneumococcal bacteria that can cause pneumonia. It's very aggressive.
Yeah, it's gonna go fast.
invading, it's basically eating the cells in your lungs, and it's growing very fast. So the turnover, it takes 20 minutes for that thing to double.
Wow.
So somebody can get really sick really fast.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what antibiotics work for. They depend on fast growth. So Borrelia, the Lyme bacteria, its doubling time at its most active state is 12 to 24 hours.
Wow.
20 minutes compared to 12 to 24 hours. And this is true of all the things that we found that are associated with what this thing we call chronic Lyme disease. They're all really slow.
Mm-hmm.
It's a survival mechanism.
Mm-hmm.
They're less targeted by the immune system if they're growing really slowly, and antibiotics don't affect them in the same way.
Mm-hmm.
The second thing they can do is course through your bloodstream and invade tissues, disperse throughout your body, and invade cells. And once they invade cells, they can go dormant, basically wall themselves off. And dormancy, intracellular dormancy, is something that I'm fascinating with because it really explains a lot of why people become chronically ill.
Mm-hmm.
Because these things can stay dormant for a long time. And I found this to be true with not only the Lyme microbes, but we hear about pandas.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I found the streptococcus associated with pandas could invade cells, go dormant. And they can invade white blood cells and use that as a transport vehicle. It's called a Trojan horse mechanism. And that's how they get into the brain, past the blood-brain barrier, and deposit into cells there. And they can stay there. And if you're healthy, and I can tell you, you have them. If you've been bitten by ticks, you have some tick-borne microbes. We pick all these things up. They stay dormant. But then when we're chronically stressed, they start reactivating.
Mm-hmm.
And they start breaking down our tissues. So they emerge, and the cells they're emerging from, well, that's bad news for the immune system. It starts attacking those cells. So we have that autoimmune phenomenon.
Mm-hmm.
So this is what's happening in chronic Lyme, but it's also, in my opinion, what's happening with most and possibly all other chronic illnesses. And when we start looking at these things, the margins start to blur between one illness and another.
Wow. I mean, so when you think about it, were we always in contact with this many microbes and kind of like a, like a cruise ship for all these guys? And we just are now living in a world in, 2025 going into 2026 where the first four things like the nutrition and like the blood flow and the toxic environment has just gotten to such a horrible level that we are no longer in like cohesive ecosystem with these? Or do you believe that there's been a massive increase in the quantity of these microbes and the transmission of these microbes into our bodies?
Yeah. There's a lot we don't know. There's a lot we're still learning. And it's as far as, what I'm giving you is a theory that I've been accumulating evidence to support in bits and pieces for 20 years.
Yeah.
And the fact of the matter is, it's just not practical to cut people up and look inside their cells and see what's there, But
Probably not, Bill.
but cases where they have done that, autopsies and various kinds of studies, it was like there were several studies, one done on multiple sclerosis, one done on Alzheimer's, that they looked and did autopsy specimens to see, are there microbes in there?
Yeah.
And so they did a special type of RNA recombination testing, sequence of RNA that are specific to bacteria to see if they had microbes in their brain. What they found was astounding. They all did.
Wow.
Lots of them, hundreds. But the more interesting thing is they did aged matched controls of people that had died of something other than a neurological disease. Found hundreds of microbes there too.
Yeah.
And interestingly, they weren't necessarily from the outside. They were from the gut and from the skin and from our sinuses and our gums. So things are crossing all the time. So the microbes that live with us that we accept in our gut and our skin I consider them, they're behind barriers. We keep them outside, on the outside of our skin. We keep them enclosed inside the gut. But it turns out that things are trickling into our bloodstream all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually found 5 different studies, done at different places in the world, where they took blood from volunteers, because you can get blood really easily.
Mm-hmm.
They found dormant bacteria inside red blood cells in every single healthy person, every single one of them. And these are, independent studies, meticulous conditions.
Mm-hmm.
It was really fascinating that, our insides are more like a freeway than a sterile space.
Yeah.
So there's just lots and lots of evidence to accumulate it. But then you apply that concept to really any chronic illness, and then start looking for the evidence that there could be micro variables. It's really fascinating. And then, it's like multiple sclerosis is a good example, right?
Yeah.
So we know that people with Lyme disease, have a lot of neurological symptoms that are very much like multiple sclerosis, but not maybe enough to define it. So multiple sclerosis is a clinical definition. It's a clinical diagnosis. It's not something that there's a test.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, a clinician, a doctor, looks at the patient, looks at all the criteria and says, you've got MS. And that same person may go to another specialist and they go, nah, you don't really have it.
Yeah.
So you have all these symptoms. Well, they found that the symptoms are related to demyelination of nerves.
Mm-hmm.
So our nerves come in bundles, and they can't touch. It's like copper wires.
Mm-hmm.
So they're insulated with a cell called an oligodendrocyte or a swan cell, depending on where it is. And these cells have myelin, which is basically an insulating substance. Well, a lot of microbes like to use that as a resource. They need it to reproduce. So Borrelia, chlamydia, many other microbes scavenge that nutrient. So I actually found evidence that Borrelia, the Lyme bacteria, is able to invade oligodendrocytes and go dormant until the body is stressed and reactivate and start breaking down to get the cell to get to the myelin. And then that cell, so the nerves start shorting out when you strip all the myelin out of it. So that's been documented, well documented for for Lyme disease or chronic Lyme disease. And the autoimmune factor of the body attacking those cells where the microbes are emerging, that's been documented. So then you look at MS. Well, a lot of MS patients test positive for Borrelia, but we found that other microbes, chlamydia and many others, are associated with that. So it's never one microbe, same mechanism. So same thing going on, but to a higher degree. So really the only thing that separates chronic Lyme from multiple sclerosis is a clinician's definition. And so the MS patient gets drugs, which actually are, instead of solving the problem, are trying to block that demyelination process. Most people don't do well with the drugs. Most of them would be classified as failures. Most MS patients don't get well on medical therapy. But I've talked to plenty of people who said, I don't want to go the drug route.
Yeah.
I want to do diet and lifestyle and herbs and the other things and see how far I can go.
Yeah.
And then they get better and they go into remission and the doctor says, wow, that's amazing.
I don't know how you did that.
Right. And it's kind of like, gee, so it's just a different way of thinking about it. But you can do that with Parkinson's, with virtually any chronic illness. I've been able to look at least theoretically and say, yes, this process has to be cellular stress with reactivation of microbes. That's what's driving the symptoms. And that's what you have to fix.
I mean, it is insane to me to think that cellular stress and microbe reactivation is causing all of these disease states, but it simplifies it in a way that's so digestible for me and understandable, and in a way that makes me feel like there's so much hope for these chronic diagnoses. Because if you take it to that level and say, how do I protect the cell from that cellular stress, whether that be via nutrient load and making sure it has what it needs, it has the time to do the autophagy it needs, it has the blood flow it needs to get those nutrients to that space, and that, we're taking care of ourselves in a way that our cells don't feel under siege and that those microbes can't then attack, then you do wipe the diagnosis and CPT codes away and you say, oh, this can be really simple.
It is.
And that's what was so exciting to me about your book, and like your whole message is not getting lost in the minutia of, oh, this doctor said I have this, and then I did this other test. And we were talking before the podcast started, I've been in this business now for 12 years. I've worked alongside functional MDs. I've loved so much getting my hands on really intensive testing, whether that be like, the simple ones like Nutraval's, gut test, Genova. Maybe you're diving into like the newer tests, like a Gallery blood biopsy for cancers. You're looking into MRI technologies, but it does really become this really hard game of almost like, we're in a podcast studio right now, and they have the machines that allow you to turn the volume up and all of like the tuners, and it's like each single level has to be like raised or lowered and constantly retested, and it feels like, wow, am I signing up for this for the rest of my life? And
right.
And it's almost this rat race or this, hamster wheel of I'm never going to get off this if I don't somehow simplify this. And I think many people are searching for the minimalism of wellness and that kind of like deeper understanding that if we wipe away all of the names and diagnoses and all of the tests, like what can we really do to protect ourselves and from the onslaught of these microbes? And you do that so beautifully. And what was also really exciting about like your whole protocol in your book is that you bring in herbs, and that is something I've only seen even the best of physicians I've worked with dip into. A little rhodiola here, a little ashwagandha there. But beyond that, the herbs were sort of protected to like traditional Chinese medicine or something like that, where it felt like you're doing one-offs here with a physician that understands a couple of them, or you're getting a full protocol that you don't understand at all.
Right.
And so you kind of pigeonholed yourself there in the middle. And I'd like for people to understand like how and what you do in your protocol to really protect those first 4 things so that the microbes don't take over.
Right. It's the herbs are really important, but I did just want to stand back and say a lot of things that we're doing in conventional medicine and functional medicine are valuable.
Yeah.
I mean, I think there's a place and a purpose for every drug made. So I don't want to throw those things out. And a lot of our cancer research now, I think, is very important. But that simple model of wellness at the cellular level is something they don't think in those terms. And I've had, various experts say, oh, it just can't be that simple. It is that simple. It's that logical. I mean, it doesn't matter what you talk about. Hormone imbalances, inflammation, everything can be described in terms of cellular stress.
Mm-hmm.
Every aspect of every illness can be described in cellular stress. And if you're not getting to that root of that cellular stress, which drugs cannot do, you're not going to make the patient well.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously, they're the things of you have to eat a decent diet. You have to do the best you can to get as much sleep as you can, to move as much as you can, to keep your world as clean as you can in our toxic world today.
Mm-hmm.
So, and doing all those things perfectly is really hard.
Right.
But I found that herbs, herbal extracts, herbal medicine can give you an edge that you just wouldn't have otherwise.
Mm-hmm.
And they are the great protectors. So when I had this experience, I went back and I studied traditional Chinese medicine, Ayurvedic medicine. I looked at North American, European, all of these herbal traditions. And it made sense, but it was a pre-science understanding. So most traditional herbalism is based on before we really had the ability to apply science at the microscopic level. So it makes sense in a certain way. When you look at Chinese medicine of feeling the pulse, looking at the tongue, those are all things that are valuable that help define things. But to really understand the herbs, I had to do it from a Western science point of view. I wanted to know what the chemistry of the herbs were doing at the cellular level.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what makes herbology so fascinating to me, is because, a lot of people think of an herb the same as they would of drug. For a long time, I thought, well, herbs are just weak forms of drugs. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not anything alike. It's apples and oranges. So when you look at a drug is blocking manifestations. It's hitting receptors, enzymes, hormones in some way to block that undesirable effect, symptom, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Like if somebody has high blood pressure, we're not restoring their system back to normal. We're blocking that response with a drug.
Right.
But there are always a lot of side effects because you're not restoring normal, and you're basically just, but sometimes that's important.
Mm-hmm.
So what the herbs are doing is addressing root causes. And that was the thing that really got my attention, is realizing that when we look at those 5 things, the herbs are hitting all 5.
Mm-hmm.
They're doing this. They're protecting our cells from stress. That's what herbs do. And if you think about it, it's very, very logical that when we take an herb, basically we're borrowing the plant's defense and regulatory systems. So plants don't have a cellular immune system like we do. They have a chemical immune system.
Mhm.
So they have this really elaborate system of chemicals to protect cells from from a wide variety of different microbes, bacteria, viruses, protozoa, yeast, whatever happens to be in that plant's environment.
Mhm.
It's building a chemical defense system. Well, all living organisms have a defense system. Even bacteria have to protect themselves from other bacteria.
Mhm.
That's why our normal flora are so favorable, is they're producing chemicals that suppress the pathogens that are there. So plants are building this sophisticated chemical defense system that is really robust against microbes, but it's also protecting cells against free radicals, toxic substances, radiation, and things that you wouldn't expect. When I was doing research for my last book, I found all these mini herbs that protected cells from excessive carbohydrate consumption.
Mhm.
And it's just so you name a stress factor, and the herbs are actually producing an effect, producing something to protect against that. But it's also plants are having to use chemicals to regulate the plant's functions,
Mhm.
changes between day and night, between seasons. So these regulatory chemicals are actually very close to what many of ours are. So certain plants have an effect on our systems. Plants use things different ways. So caffeine is a phytochemical that the plant is using. Well, it stimulates us. It hits certain receptors. All plants aren't necessarily good for us because of the way the plant has built out these protective systems.
Mhm.
So nobody would make the mistake of eating poison ivy as a medicinal plant, right?
Yeah.
But these things that we call herbs have been used by humans for tens, hundreds of thousands of years, so that they are things that we found that are compatible with our systems. So that they're just natural, that they're going to add protection. So, what kinds of protection you get depends on what kind of stress factors the plant has in its environment.
Mhm.
So you mentioned rhodiola, right?
Mhm.
So rhodiola is its native environment is in Siberia. Interestingly, though, you find the same plants in a lot of places in the world. It's actually been found in the Appalachians of North America, but it survives in cold, harsh environments. So it's really good. Its chemical makeup is good for helping us adapt to physical stresses. Now, it has some antimicrobial properties, but they're not as good as some other herbs because, rhodiola, there's not a lot of microbe stress in Siberia, right?
Right.
So, but another plant, cat's claw from the Amazon, warm, moist environment, a lot of microbe stress there. It's a really good antimicrobial. So, all plants are going to have some antimicrobial properties, but some are better than others. And when you combine herbs, which you can do, that's one of the things in herbalism you can't do with drugs because it compounds their toxicity.
Mhm.
Well, when you look at herbs that we define as adaptogens that have low potential for toxicity, you benefit from combining 5 to a dozen herbs together to get a synergistic effect. So you combine, you overlap their antimicrobial properties and their protective properties. So where I see herbs is they're just fantastic cell protectants to protect us from all the things that are threatening our cells and causing stress. So taking herbs gives you an edge that you really can't get otherwise.
So layering them on top of each other is not causing them to be more toxic, but how do we know what the right herbs are for us? And can we just take any herbs and is more better? Like,
Yeah.
I feel like that's like the hardest part is we're like looking for experts to say, okay, we haven't really used these in Southern California in the last
Right.
like couple hundred years, unless you're an herbalist or really granola out here, right? So like how do we know? And like what are some of your favorites? And yeah, how
Sure.
would someone like start a protocol to bring them on board?
Yeah. When we say that word herb, There is a pretty wide spectrum, right?
Yeah.
So it starts with culinary herbs that we put in our food and food plants, all the way to herbs that do have strong drug-like effects. And it's the chemicals that they have and what the plant is using a chemical for. So there are herbs that have very strong drug-like effects. Half of our drugs come from plants with very strong drug-like effects. So that end of the spectrum, I pretty much stay away from, and
Mhm.
most practicing herbalists do today.
Mhm.
So I call those the red zone herbs,
Okay.
and I don't really do much with them. But people are using them, like kraton and different things that they want a very specific targeted effect that have some response in the body.
Mhm.
And then there are yellow zone herbs that do have some drug-like effects, and they act like drugs. It's like St. John's wort would fit in that category. It's a really nice herb, but it actually has chemicals in it that work the same way that Prozac or Zoloft would, the serotonin reuptake inhibiting drugs.
Wow.
So it has some drug-like effects. Really nice herb. I don't really use it that much.
Mhm.
I want to stay within what I call the green zone, which would be herbs that really don't have drug-like effects.
Mhm.
And there are a lot of herbs like that.
Mhm.
Turmeric, some of my favorite, what I'm starting to call antimicrobial adaptogens. So adaptogens are herbs that don't have drug-like effects, have the ability to increase resilience, make us more stress tolerant, um, and they do that by protecting our cells.
Mhm.
So we had mentioned ashwagandha before. That's a really nice herb that helps balance our stress hormones. It's also a pretty good antimicrobial.
Mhm.
People don't think about it for that, but it's
Mm-mm.
doing a lot of stuff. It's not just balancing your stress hormones. It has these adaptogenic effects. There's some adaptogens like ginseng and eleuthera and some others, though, that are very stimulating
Mhm.
that I don't use in my practice because dealing with chronic illness, most people are really agitated and have an exaggerated fight or flight response. So I stay away from stimulating herbs. I don't even really use rhodiola that much
Mhm.
because it's a little bit stimulating.
Mhm.
I use it personally, but I don't really use it for people that are recovering from some kind of illness.
Mhm.
But there's so many others. Japanese knotweed, that's a favorite. Wonderful antimicrobial herb, but wow, it's a powerhouse. It's a great source of resveratrol, the anti-aging substance you find in wine. Japanese knotweed is actually a better source. Chinese skullcap. I know that's kind of a crazy name, but it uh, all of these herbs are what we call immune modulators. They balance our immune system functions. They protect our cells. They protect our organs, and they're doing that by protecting cells, protecting our cells from not only microbes but other stress factors. Another good herb is milk thistle to protect our liver.
Mhm.
And if you're familiar with herbs at all, you hear about milk thistle. It's great for protecting our liver. That's a big deal in our toxic world.
Mhm.
By the time most people get to 50, they've burned out a large portion of their detoxifying ability in their liver. And then milk thistle can actually help regenerate cells in the liver. But interesting fact. So recently, I came upon a study that looked at milk thistle and found that it's really good for protecting the cells that reorganize our bones. It is really great for preventing or protecting against postmenopausal osteoporosis. So here's this liver herb that's protecting your bones. And it just shows they're not specific. They're affecting every cell in your body in some positive way.
Mhm.
And I think that's where I've leaned more toward this adaptogenic whole body effect of the herbs rather than many traditional herbalists are still doing that very specific thing. We're going to do this test or this thing, and we're going to find out what exact herbs you need. And I've just found you don't really have to be that picky.
It is nice to know that you can stack them without any side effects, and that they
Yeah.
can be active on multiple body parts, like milk thistle, for example. That feels safe and easy to bring on board. I think the next question I have is like source and quality, and like how do we ensure that we're getting the right types of herbs, because you go to Mother's Market, you can go to Erewhon, you can jump on, Vitacost, or people are buying things from Amazon left and right. Like when it comes to herbs, like, you don't want to just be taking a bunch of random insoluble fiber. You want to know that it's active and actually working. Cause I think that's for me what ensures compliance too. Like I take my magnesium with L-theanine and GABA every night because it feels like I've had half a glass of wine and I don't really drink anymore, and I want to get good sleep with these little babies,
Right.
So it's like my body craves it and I need it and I know I need to take it.
Sure.
That I put creatine in my coffee because I actually feel cognitive benefit from it. I think if I wasn't feeling a change or a difference, I wouldn't crave it. So what are the different types of herbs? How do we identify quality? And and then we can talk about how to do that.
Yeah, it doesn't take that long to learn about it. And the last book I wrote, the Cellular Wellness Solution, I put an herbal primer in there just for people to get started so they can understand, just to get a handful of 6 or a dozen different herbs or a product that you're comfortable with. And you can go from there. And you can build on that pretty readily, and it's not really hard. So if you stay within the parameters of just those green zone herbs, it's really, really hard to get in trouble. But beyond that, a lot of what people are taking, and there's so much marketing hype out there, that people are getting substandard quality.
Mm-hmm.
So companies are going to want to sell. They're very profit oriented, so they're going to sell the thing that they can make money on that costs them the very least.
Mm-hmm.
So the lowest cost and the lowest value you have in herbs is what would be called whole powder extracts. So this is what most of the products are out there. If you get a capsule and it's filled with powder, more than likely it's going to be a whole herb powder.
Mm-hmm.
And basically what they do is they take the plant, leaves, stems, roots, whatever the active proportion of the plant is, and they're going to grind that up into a powder and put it in a capsule.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, though, what you're getting is fiber. And not much else. And they're not going to cost very much. Like if you go and get a particular herb, you just pick out the herb on the shelf, and it's probably going to only cost you $15 or so.
Mm-hmm.
What you don't know, though, is if you're buying a hyped up product and and you're looking for the ingredients and it's hard to find them, but there's lots of science and it sounds very convincing, that's probably what you're getting for a super inflated price,
mm-hmm.
which isn't ideal. So I don't really use much in the way of whole herb powders because people don't get much of a response for them. You have to have enough of the actual chemistry of the plant.
Mm-hmm.
So the next step up from that are tinctures. And I do use a lot of tinctures. I think tinctures are really nice. So basically that is they take the active parts of the plant, soak it in an extractant like water and alcohol. Water will pull the aqueous and alcohol will pull the fat-based chemicals from the plant. And that becomes concentrated in the liquid, and they throw away the plant parts, so you're just taking that. And that's really good.
Mm-hmm.
And I use a fair amount of those. The barrier to some people is just taste. Some of them can be very bitter, but they're really nice. You kind of get used to the bitter. You always get to the point you enjoy it a bit.
You're like craving it.
But so it's kind of a natural feel. But what I've mostly gravitated toward and what I used in my recovery are what are called standardized powdered extracts. It looks the same. It's a capsule with powder in it.
Mm-hmm.
But what you're actually getting is a tincture that's been sprayed on the surface. They dry off the water and alcohol and just collect the pure powder, the chemistry of the plant. So it's about 10 times, at minimum, 10 times more concentrated than that whole herb powder. And that's where, and so if you're looking on a bottle or you're looking on a website, it's going to, instead of just listing the name of the plant, it's going to name the common name, the scientific name. It's going to put like a select phytochemical that they standardized it to, and you're going to get a milligram quantity of that specific extract. Instead of what you see on a lot of products that are proprietary blends, is you'll see one number, it'll say like 1,000 milligrams, and it'll list 6 herbs. You don't really know what's in it, and guaranteed if they haven't said standardized, it's just whole herb powder. The next thing is testing for purity, potency, to make sure you really are getting what you believe you're getting. And that comes from companies that are willing to pay the extra, and it increases the cost of the product, but pay the extra to get what's called a certificate of analysis, where a third party has taken the lot of the ingredient and done testing, looking for heavy metals, contamination, bacteria, other contaminants. And they made sure that the standardization is correct. In our company, we actually go one step further by getting our own sample and do our independent testing to make sure the certificate of analysis is correct. And then we test it during the manufacturing process too. So about half of companies out there are really good and are doing that standard. About half are not. So you do have to do your homework a little bit, and you will notice a difference.
Yeah. Well, when it comes to those green herbs and the supplements you provide as the standardized version of these herbs, do you do blends, or is it like single herbs that you're selling? And then I know you also have a full community where you can learn how to lower that fight or flight response, bring on herbs, focus on how to protect your cells from all of the onslaught of stress and provide them with the nutrients that they need, kind of like a handheld approach to your book, Cellular Wellness, in a way that gets people on board and allows them to have really that consistency over time and see the benefit. Can you kind of talk about some of the herbs that you have and what that program looks like, so that if someone's dealing with some kind of chronic illness and feeling frustrated with their diagnosis and taking it to this level and taking their health into their own hands like you did once long ago, have the chance of healing? Yeah.
When I did this, I had some scientific background to go on, and I was really stubborn, and I did the do-it-yourself route. And during my recovery, I had like a shoebox full of all these different bottles and all these different things that I was taking, and things would run out and I'd have to reorder, and it was kind of crazy. That's a big barrier to a lot of people, because typically people aren't going to get well or get the kind of benefit they want from one herb or one ingredient. So it is that synergy between multiple herbs. And over the years, I learned that feel of it to formulate that, to get the feel of the products that are going to work well together to give us the kind of responses that we want. So making that easier was really important. So one of the steps in my journey, I guess this is like 10 or 15 years ago, I was able to do something that is impossible now. So I was in a small practice in North Carolina, and I had all these herbs, and people were, and I was making products available, but it was this mix of things that they were having to buy, and it was really frustrating. And I wanted them to have exactly what I learned that was a reflection of my recovery. So I talked to this supplement company, this manufacturer up in New York, to do small runs to my very specific specifications and ingredients for like 100 bottles,
Yeah.
which was crazy. I mean, now you have to order like 5,000 bottles,
Yep.
and they did it. They agreed. So I started building these products and just got great responses from all my patients. And we built that into a company, and now we serve a very wide audience. But we also learn along the way, that having products that are easy to use is really beneficial for people, but you have to have that support. So I guess our company has been in existence for about 10 years, and building out the products, but also building out support programs. And the latest thing that I've done is trying to take what I would do in the office, the time, the commitment of spending hours with people, sorting through their history and what's going on, and giving them that TLC that they needed to make those changes, to do the things that they needed to do in their life with their diet, hitting all those 5 parameters. It just takes a lot of time. And so I wanted to create something that gave them that. So we were able to create a community that's within something called Mighty Networks. And the community is like our own social media place that we own, that's not controlled by some other big corporation. And so it's a safe place that people can be, that they can talk to other people that are on the same stage in their journey, and that they can find answers to questions. And they're constantly, they're given information in little dribbles as they need it. And it's just been a great vehicle. So we've created this program that we would call Restore 180, that's 6 months long, that we carry people through a process of calming that sympathetic overactivity, that exaggerated fight or flight, that everybody is just in turmoil and everything is agitated. We slow that down and we work through gut and detoxification issues, and finally get them on the full course of the program and head them toward getting their lives back. But it involves the community and this constant effort. And I built a resource library so they constantly have, they have information that they need. We do live sessions. They've got health coaching going on, but all for a cost that isn't prohibitive. And we're just having extraordinary results with it.
Well, I love that you're offering such a comprehensive approach to your community, because for a lot of people, sitting down with a physician is 10 minutes. It's not an hour.
Right.
And the hour does become cost prohibitive. But a lot of people have that internal drive and fire and that stubbornness to not accept what is, a diagnosis of high cholesterol, hypertension, joint pain, autoimmune diseases. And they really want to get to like the real core root cause. And this just getting down to the cellular level was just an aha moment for me. So I really want to say thank you so much for writing your book and offering these resources to your community and now to mine. I think it's a great place for people to start if they're just totally frustrated with their healing journey and they want to get to the basics, because a minimalistic approach that feels doable really does have the longevity we need to feel well and have a big, beautiful life. So,
and it does affect everything. I mean, I was diagnosed with essential hypertension when I was in my 30s. Every time I went to a doctor, it would be 150 over 100. They said, "You're just born with it. That's you.
Yeah.
And you're going to have to take drugs." I couldn't take any of the drugs. They just made me feel horrible. And I finally just kind of gave up.
Yeah.
And my cholesterol was going up. My blood sugar was going up. All of these things were happening. And then my health crashed completely. So I did this other approach where I did the herbs. I did the modifications that I needed to take care of my cells. And everything went back to normal, Now at age 68, my blood pressure is typically like 115/20 over about 70 when I walk in an office. My cholesterol now is better than when I was in my 40s. It's just all these things that I didn't treat that just got better because I restored my cellular health. I've now been taking herbs continually for 20 years, and I've enjoyed some of the best health that I've enjoyed in my entire life in the past decade. It's really amazing.
That's such a testament, and it's so powerful to hear that, and exciting to think about the health we can all have as we age, because I think people are kind of looking for this, they have these artificial sort of finish lines like, oh, I won't be stressed when I get through this project, or when we get out of the phase of like not sleeping with our kids, because I'm sure the next phase is like not sleeping out of worry, because like, where are they? Whose house are they at?
Yeah.
I think it's just, instead of being in the future and in that fight or flight to get there, is really just like taking a step back, having proper boundaries for yourself, and trusting the process and the timeline of your life so that you really can take care of your cellular health. And it's really exciting to think about all the fun you can have.
It's about finding balance. And I think everybody that does that finds that you can still do life, and it can be crazy. But if you have these anchors that you can go back to, and it's like, I eat really healthy.
Yeah.
My blood sugar is low. My hemoglobin A1C is great. And I wouldn't trade it for anything because I enjoy the food.
Yeah.
And
Nothing
sleep,
feels better.
it's just a day that I've slept 8 hours is just such a great day. Why would you want to do it otherwise? And you learn to live around these other things. And stress has come up,
Yeah.
I mean, just, I had getting here, I had to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning to catch a plane. Wasn't the best night of sleep. So you do have those things come up, but if they're infrequent and you're compensating for them, you bounce back quickly. And that's what it's all about.
I love it. Dr. Bill Rawls, thank you so much for your time and for being here on the podcast, for writing both of your books, for building your community and your herb company as well. I think finding someone that we trust in a new space is really important. And I've loved exploring your resources and reading your books. So thank you for your time. Thank you for being here. Thank you for taking that 5 a.m. flight.
Well, thank you for the opportunity. It's just these things are so important that people know about them. So what you're doing is so remarkably important.
Thank you.
It's just, we have to change the world. 70% of the world's population is chronically ill. That's not good enough.
Yeah, that's not cutting it.
Yep.
Where can people follow along? Where can they learn more?
I have a website called rawlsmd.com. And if you go to rawlsmd.com/resources, you'll find out all about the programs and everything. And our company is vitalplan.com.
We'll put links to everything in the show notes so people can follow along with your book, Cellular Wellness Solution.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Be Well by Kelly LeVeque podcast. If you enjoyed the show, please consider leaving a review in your favorite podcast app and subscribing on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or YouTube. We're also excited to share that full-length video episodes are now on YouTube and Spotify, so you can watch along as you listen. The best way to support me and the show is by sharing it with your friends and family. Your recommendations make all the difference. This is a Wellness Loud production, produced by Drake Peterson. The video is recorded by Luke Rodriguez and edited by Jesse Trout. Sound mixing is by Mike Fry. See you next time.
The content of this show is for educational and informational purposes only. It is not a substitute for individual medical or mental health advice and does not constitute a provider-patient relationship. As always, talk to your doctor or healthcare team first.